Most people don't struggle with communication because they lack words. They struggle because they lack certainty. They enter conversations already negotiating against themselves. They explain too much. They apologize too early. They speak fast, hoping to be understood instead of speaking clearly, expecting to be respected. Confidence in communication does not begin when you open your mouth. It begins before the conversation ever starts. It begins with the belief that what you have to say is valid, even if the other person disagrees. The moment you need approval to speak, confident communication is calm. It is measured. It does not rush to fill silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is structure. When you pause before responding, you signal that you are thinking, not reacting. That pause changes the entire power dynamic of the conversation. People often mistake loudness for confidence. They think intensity equals authority. But true confidence does not need to dominate the room. It stabilizes it. When you speak steadily without emotional spikes, people listen differently. Your words land heavier because they are not wrapped in chaos. One of the fastest ways to lose confidence in a conversation is to argue from emotion instead of clarity. Emotion blurs your message. It pulls you into defending feelings instead of stating facts. Confidence means you can acknowledge emotion without being controlled by it. You can say what needs to be said without raising your voice or justifying your existence. Clarity is the backbone of confident communication. If your message is clear in your mind, it will be clear in your words. Most people over-explain because they are unsure of their position. They add details, examples, and disclaimers hoping one of them will convince the other person. But confidence says it once, clearly, and lets it stand. The way you pace your words matters more than the words themselves. Speaking too fast signals nervousness. Speaking too slow can feel rehearsed. Confident communication has rhythm. It allows space for ideas to breathe. It lets the listener process instead of overwhelm. Boundaries play a critical role in confident conversations. When you allow interruptions, dismissiveness, or disrespect, your words lose weight. Confidence is reinforced by what you tolerate. When you calmly stop an interruption or redirect a conversation, you demonstrate self-respect. And self-respect is persuasive. You do not need to win every conversation to communicate confidently. In fact, confidence often means letting go of the need to win. The goal is not domination. The goal is alignment and respect. You can disagree without becoming defensive. You can stand firm without becoming rigid. Confident communicators listen carefully, not to agree, not to counterattack, but to understand the direction of the conversation. Listening gives you information. Information gives you leverage. When you respond to what was actually said instead of what you assumed, your response becomes precise. Another key element of confidence is restraint. Just because you can respond does not mean you should. Choosing not to engage in every provocation is a sign of strength. Confidence is knowing when your silence speaks louder than your words. Your body communicates before you do. Posture, eye contact, and stillness send signals long before you speak. A grounded posture and relaxed presence reinforce your words. When your body is calm, your voice follows. Confidence also requires detachment from validation. If your self-worth depends on being understood, agreed with, or liked, your communication becomes fragile. Confident speakers are anchored internally. They speak from conviction, not reaction. They allow others to disagree without collapsing their sense of self. You will not master every conversation by controlling others. You master conversations by controlling yourself, your tone, your pace, your boundaries, your clarity. When those are aligned, your presence changes. Over time, people respond differently to you. They interrupt less. They listen more. Not because you demanded it, but because your communication trained them how to treat you. Confident communication is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And like any skill, it improves with awareness and practice. Each conversation is an opportunity to refine it. Speak with intention. Pause with purpose. Set boundaries without anger. And remember this, when your words come from clarity instead of insecurity, they don't need to be loud to be powerful. That is the blueprint. Confidence is not about how loudly you speak or how much space you take up in a room. It is about the steadiness behind your words. Volume can demand attention, but certainty commands respect. When someone speaks with certainty, they do not need to overpower others. Their presence alone creates weight. People listen because something feels grounded, not because they are being forced to listen. Loudness is often mistaken for confidence because it is visible and immediate. But loudness can be a cover for insecurity. It tries to dominate before doubt has a chance to surface. Certainty, on the other hand, is quiet and controlled. It does not rush. It does not compete. It assumes its place. That assumption changes everything about how the message is received. Certainty begins internally. It starts with knowing what you believe and why you believe it. When your position is clear in your own mind, your delivery becomes calm. You are no longer searching for approval while speaking. You are simply expressing a conclusion you have already reached. That internal alignment shows up in your tone, your posture, and your pacing. When someone lacks certainty, their words tend to spill out quickly. They overexplain, they add disclaimers. They apologize for their opinions before they even share them. This behavior is not a lack of intelligence or preparation. It is a lack of trust in their own perspective. Volume sometimes enters as compensation, an attempt to drown out internal doubt. Certainty allows you to speak without urgency. You do not feel the need to convince everyone immediately. You are comfortable letting your words sit. You understand that not every message needs instant agreement to be valid. That patience communicates confidence more powerfully than raised voices ever could. In conversations, certainty changes the dynamic. When you speak calmly and clearly without emotional spikes, the other person adjusts to your pace. The room slows down, the energy stabilizes. Even disagreement becomes more productive because the focus stays on ideas rather than intensity. Certainty also shows in restraint. You do not respond to every challenge as a threat. You do not escalate when questioned. You welcome discussion because your confidence is not fragile. You can clarify without defending your worth. You can repeat your point without sounding reactive. That composure signals strength. People often raise their volume when they feel unheard. But being heard and being loud are not the same. Certainty improves how you are heard because it sharpens your message. When your words are precise, they cut through noise. They do not need to shout to be effective. Tone is one of the clearest indicators of certainty. A steady tone suggests self-control. A fluctuating tone often reveals internal conflict. When you believe in what you are saying, your voice naturally steadies. You are not trying to sell an idea, you are stating it. Body language reinforces this. Certainty shows up in stillness. Fidgeting, pacing, or exaggerated gestures can indicate nervous energy. A calm posture communicates that you are comfortable where you stand. You do not need to perform. You simply exist in your position. Certainty also changes how you handle silence. Silence does not intimidate confident communicators. They do not rush to fill gaps. They allow pauses to exist. Those pauses give their words more weight. Silence becomes part of the message, not an enemy to escape. This kind of confidence is especially powerful in conflict. When emotions rise, certainty acts as an anchor. You can acknowledge feelings without being swept away by them. You can restate your position without escalating. You do not need to win the moment to protect your credibility. Certainty does not mean stubbornness. You can be certain and still open to new information. In fact, true confidence allows flexibility. You are not threatened by being wrong because your identity is not tied to perfection. You are anchored in self-trust, not ego. Developing certainty requires reflection. You build it by understanding your values, your limits, and your priorities. When those are clear, decisions become easier. Communication becomes simpler. You speak from alignment instead of reaction. It is important to recognize that certainty is felt before it is heard. People sense it immediately. They respond differently to someone who speaks with grounded assurance. There is less interruption, less testing, less resistance. Not because the person is intimidating, but because they are stable. Volume can momentarily control a room. Certainty can lead it. Loud voices fade when the noise stops.